It's Heart Support. We are here with Rory from Dayseeker. Rory, thank you so much for hopping on with us to talk a little bit about music and mental health.
Of course. Thanks for having me, dude. I appreciate it.
Heck yeah, heck yeah. So we'll jump right into it, man. Off the bat, what is a song or a band that boosts your mental health when you need a pick me up?
Oh man, when I need a pick me up, um, that's such a tough question to ask because I feel like everything I listen to is very depressing and very melancholy these days. It's funny, I've been really into this artist named it's all one word. He's called Living Thing. And he just popped up on my Spotify a few months ago, and it's funny. I I ended up researching. It kind of sounded like it was Matt Healy who sings for the 1975, but it was a very
Damn.
it's a very mellow, I don't know, like super ambient, just kind of vibey project. And I find myself listening to that over and over again. So yeah, he's called Living Thing. He has a song called Orchid, and he's kind of an unknown guy, and he's gonna put out an EP, I think, in a couple of months. And yeah, I put that song on a lot when I'm driving around or hanging out with my kid. I don't know why, it's just something I keep going back to. Yeah.
Nice. I love that. I love the support for the smaller artists in there.
Mhm.
Like with what you first said, who are some of those bands that like do have the heavier or the more melancholic side of music that you can just resonate with when you know you need to?
Yeah, I mean, an old favorite is definitely like Linkin Park. That's a really big one for me. I'm a really big fan of a band called Thrice. They're also from out here in
Nice.
Southern California. Thrice is great. Circa Survive, another old favorite. I'm a big fan of the Midnights. It's kind of this 80s synthwave kind of duo. Yeah, I don't know. I listen to a lot of stuff, but I do feel like, yeah, I think when I really think about like times when I was younger and when I was kind of going through it with my upbringing at home and stuff, I do feel like I leaned into Linkin Park a lot at that time.
Totally. Yeah. Is there anything specific about the Linkin Park songs or sound that made you lean into it so heavy?
I'm not really sure. I mean, this was a time before like iPods existed, like really. But when I was in high school, yeah, you would have to put a CD onto a CD player, and then you would, but I remember I'd go running during my PE period, and I would just put the like Meteora or Hybrid Theory on, and I would just listen to them. And I don't know, I think it's like a beautiful thing about music is I feel like if I was like struggling a lot with my mental health or just the circumstances of what I was going through. Because my mom had an addiction to methamphetamine when I was kind of young, and she didn't do it for very long, but it definitely kind of melted her brain and kind of warped her sense of reality. And I think I was like 7 years old when that happened, and I think a lot of things seemed very normal as a kid. You're just kind of like, this is my reality, so it's normal. And then it wasn't until I like got into just like staying the night at my friends' houses in high school and seeing their parents and their moms, and I was like, damn, this is a little different of an experience than I'm getting at home. But yeah, I just feel like I was a pretty quiet kid when I was a teenager, and I feel like when I needed a place to turn, I felt like music was like the only thing I had. And I think a lot of Linkin
Ooh.
Park songs are pretty like dark and melancholy, and you know, a more atypical or happy person might listen to that and think, God, this is so depressing. Like, why are you listening to this? But for me, it just had an intense relatability where I could really I felt like really heard and I felt really seen. Just that knowing that like somebody else who is a musician that I looked up to also seemed to have gone through a lot of painful experiences like I had.
I feel like that's such a powerful part of music when we can see like the people that in some sense you idolize, who are on the top of the world, like still going through the same thing, still being able to relate over the same struggles.
Yeah.
And that brings me into thinking like when you were a kid, you went from listening to the music to creating it. And as an artist, can you speak on a specific time when creating music helped you heal?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I started writing songs when I was like 15 or 16, and they weren't very good, but it still felt like a way to be I don't know, like a way to have a cathartic process, a way to have a diary, so to speak. And I remember, yeah, I had a really bad breakup when I was, I think, 20 or 21 years old, and I I was really heartbroken at the time, and kind of depressed, and I didn't know what to do. And so I wrote a little EP that I put out just under my name forever ago, and I don't know, it was kind of interesting getting to translate our experiences and my feelings and my pain into songs. It's like I would finish writing something and like put the notepad aside, and I feel like I could just kind of breathe a little easier about it. And then I felt like by the time I had written enough about it and finished the EP and put it out, it was just like, wow, that was not a very fun experience emotionally, but I'm so proud of the fact that I was able to turn it into something productive and something beautiful in art and in music. And you know, it was a much smaller scale back in the day, but I'd still, you know, put out stuff like that and still get a message or you know, a DM every once in a while just saying, wow, I listened to this song and I really related to what you were saying. And it was, you know, it's kind of been a cool, like full circle moment for me as a musician, because that's exactly what I really loved about music when I was younger. And so getting to experience it on the other side as a musician is a very, very cool moment for me.
That's amazing. It's like finding your own form of therapy through the music and, just letting it be that outlet. And it's almost in a sense um, like journaling or like gratitude journaling, but taking it to another level of artistry where you're writing it out in poems and in verse, and you can add that to the music, and it takes that, just getting it out of your brain, and adds a whole nother
Mhm.
creative level to it. I love that you spoke on that.
Yeah. Thanks, man. I appreciate it, dude.
Heck yeah. So you guys recently released Creature in the Black Knight, which is absolutely sick. What does that Creature in the Black Knight represent for you?
Yeah, you know, I think a lot of this album is just about like my own personal experiences that I've gone through in the last couple of years since the record before that. And I think it was really rooted in I don't know, just as I've had to like try and navigate my life as the band has gotten a little bit more successful, and just how it's affected like myself, my personal relationships. And I don't know, it's interesting. I feel like the songs kind of just took on their own shape, and I feel like in going to therapy, I realized that I had a lot of things that I needed to work on, emotionally speaking. And that was, I think, where a lot of some of the ideas for the songs came through. And I'm not really quite sure, you know, it came out in the way that it did lyrically, but for whatever reason, we started writing like Pale Moonlight and then Creature in the Black Night and then like Forgotten Ghosts, and, you know, all these songs that were, I don't know, they were very rooted in like kind of horror, kind of death. But it's funny because like none of the songs really have a lot to do with like actual death and actually dying. They're all kind of written from a like a metaphorical perspective. Like the Living Dead, for instance, is kind of a ballad song on the album, but it was kind of about how in therapy I kind of realized that I was compartmentalizing a lot of emotions that I felt. And so if something really traumatic or heavy would hit me, it's like I would kind of be like, oh, and like push it to the side and do a shitty duct tape job on it. And then I would try and forget about it. And I wasn't really like processing how I felt. And I think when I was writing that song, it was interesting writing basically that situation in a metaphor of like, yeah, what if in the song it's like the metaphor is like you're a zombie, like you're it's like you can walk around and you can look like you're a human being, but on the inside, maybe you're
Mm.
not really fully feeling everything that you need to. And so So I think, yeah, there's a lot of like a lot of elements of death and horror kind of strewn about the whole record. And I honestly got to hand it to like our graphic designer. His name's Ryan. He sent over an artwork with the Reaper figure on it for when we were picking out stuff for Pale Moonlight. And we just saw that and we were like, yeah, that's like a very, very cool centerpiece for this. And it just seemed to kind of, I don't know, it seemed to represent like everything on the album super well sonically once we got done with the record.
Yeah, that's awesome. And the album really does have a great like image to it. You feel like you're jumping into a world, especially with so many songs that play off of that theme of death. You
Mhm.
did a great job actually answering a lot of what my next question was to ask, but I wanted to ask specifically about, a lot of the songs are titled pretty straightforward about death, like Crawl Back to My Coffin, Cemetery Blues, Meet Me at the Reaper, Forgotten Ghost. Even if it's not speaking on death in a literal sense, how do you feel like that theme works its way through dealing with trauma and some of the other motifs in the album?
Yeah, it's funny because somebody asked me about they asked me a similar question in regards to what you had just said, and I don't know if it's because my dad passed a couple of years ago, and so it seemed like maybe I don't know, it just feels like maybe death has been at the forefront of my mind a little bit more in the last couple of years than it ever was before, because that was like a more bigger traumatic loss for me. But that is the funny thing is that I feel like the record before this one, Dark Sun, it felt like so literally rooted in a lot of themes of death, and just talking about what it was like to lose a parent. But then it feels like the instrumentation was kind of like poppy, and like 80s synth rock around it. And so I think it's actually kind of funny stepping back and realizing like a lot of most of this record like has nothing to do with like actually dying in like a literal sense. It's all like just cool ways of being metaphorical. And
You
I
feel
don't know, was it because I think Pale Moonlight and Creature in the Black Night were the first two songs that we wrote for the record, and it felt even just with those two songs like there was a picture being painted of where it was going to go sonically and what the vibe of the record was. And then so when we started working on like Crawl Back to My Coffin, it was like, okay, this is kind of more upbeat rock sonically. It's not a super dark sounding song. And so it felt like, okay, maybe I can make the lyrics kind of darker so that it feels like it leans still into the theme of the record. But, and again, Crawl Back to My Coffin has like nothing to do with death. It's a metaphor for like,
so
being single and on your own and comfortable in your own emotions. And then you meet somebody and they make you excited to try and maybe get into a relationship or come out of your shell. And then for whatever reason, things don't work out. And you kind of wish that maybe you had just stayed in a state of isolation instead of trying to put in effort and try and work things through with somebody new. And so I think I was going through that exact situation pretty close to when we were making the record. And so I just kind of thought like, that's kind of interesting. Just yeah, trying to imagine yourself as like a corpse, and then you meet somebody and they make you feel alive again, and then they hurt you, and you're like, well, yeah, I wish I wouldn't have done that because I think I was more comfortable being alone. So yeah, it's funny. I wish I had like a grand answer or a good idea to say like this is why we did this, and we were really careful about it. But I feel like sometimes we just write music and the stuff that comes out is just what comes out at the end of the day. But when we finished the record, it was like, yeah, there's a cohesive kind of vibe going throughout the whole thing for sure.
that's awesome. Yeah. And I feel like that vibe is definitely one that everybody can relate to and pick up on in some sense. I think everybody feels that theme of Crawl Back to My Coffin at some point in their life. So I really love that. Thank you, man.
Yeah, of
Now,
course.
can you speak on a specific time when the music community picked you up?
I feel like a time where the community picked me up was probably the release of our album, Dark Sun, after my dad had passed. And I felt that way specifically. It was actually interesting. To be honest, in the beginning, I didn't feel like I was being lifted up very well at all because it felt like it was a lot of harsh critique online from I should say, from a very small amount of people. But for some reason, if
Mhm.
you're reading like 100 comments and two people say it's the worst thing they've ever heard in their lives, those seem to stick a little bit more than, people saying they love the record. And but it's enough, I think, definitely when you release an album, it kind of psychs you out into going like, oh man, was I so close to the record? Maybe it's not that good. And I just think it's good because I'm a part of the band. And but I will say, I feel like after that record got to sit out in the music scene and kind of marinate for a while, I feel like I just like I've never had more fans reach out to me in person over DM and just lay out like it does feel like my dad passing of cancer, like that was a very relatable story to a lot of different people. And so I feel like a lot of people, would say things like, yeah, I had a parent who passed from cancer, or it didn't even really need to be cancer. They might have just known somebody in their lives who passed away, and something about that
Mhm.
record really pulled them out of it. Or I remember I met a fan one time, and this is a really good story in the sense that I love all of our fans. I appreciate everything they have to say, but it does feel like most people usually it's like they want to throw out something really negative they went through to show that they're relating to you, and I fully understand that. But it's when people are just like, my parent died, my partner died, like it's a lot of death, and they feel like comfortable in talking to me about that because of that record, and I totally understand
Mhm.
it. But sometimes it can have a heavy emotional weight to it. But I remember this one guy told me, he's like, I listened to your record about your dad passing away, and my dad is alive, but our relationship has been really fractured. And hearing about what happened with your dad and how you lost him and how much he meant to you, it actively encouraged me to reach out to my father and like make amends for a really rough time we were experiencing. And so that was a nice little like ray of sunshine. I think I even remember telling him like, that's like one of the nicest things I've ever heard because it's always rooted in like somebody has already died or something horrible's already happened, and the music helped me through it, and that is amazing. But it was really cool to hear somebody had foresight into their own life, and they're like, this record touched me so deeply that it made me want to repair a relationship that was like I said, kind of fractured and kind of messed up. So but I will say I feel like I don't know, getting to write that record and put it out and see how many people it helped and how many people have reached out to me. I feel like that was it was a nice moment, and I feel I still get messages all the time about that record. So that was definitely a time where I felt like the music scene kind of lifted us up for sure.
That really is beautiful, and it's a great like kind of pivot point on the perspective you spoke on before, where it's like you resonated with music because you saw other people going through it, and now you're able to be that to other people, which is just beautiful.
Yeah. Thanks, dude. Yeah. I feel lucky I get to do this. It's a really cool experience.
Yeah. Now, do you have a certain person in your life who you know you can turn to when you need support, and how valuable is that relationship?
Yeah, I would say my my daughter's mom is definitely that for me. We've been very, very close over the years, and obviously very close since the birth of our daughter. And yeah, she's my rock. She's definitely, if I need somebody to lean on, she is somebody I can go to anytime. And I know she feels the same towards me, and it's a really great relationship we have, and I feel very lucky that she's in my life for sure.
That's beautiful. And now, what song of yours, a Dayseeker song, do you feel like is your mental health anthem?
Um, I know I talked about it. I feel like The Living Dead is probably a good idea to go with for that one, just because I do feel like there is kind of a beautiful thing about trying to sit with your pain when you're feeling it instead of pushing it away or distracting yourself from it. And so, I mean, in that song, I felt like I was really open about the fact that I can recognize that I'm numb to my emotions sometimes, and that's something about myself that I don't particularly like, and it's something that I'm trying to change. And so I think like there's a lot of sadness about that song, but I feel like the hook kind of says like I don't want to believe I'm the living dead. So, there is kind of
Mm.
this echoing line of like, well, I don't want that to be my story for forever. It is my story right now, but I would really like that to change and to be healthier emotionally and like I said, just like really sit with my pain when I need to instead of trying to push it off to the side. So I feel like that's a good one for like pro mental health, even though it's probably like one of the saddest songs on the record.
Mm. No, but it is very beautiful, and I could definitely see that theme inspiring a whole lot of motivational tattoos in the future. That's
Yeah, there you
that's
go.
super cool. So if there was one last thing that you could say to one of your fans who found themselves in a harder period or struggling a little bit, what would you say to them?
Yeah, I feel like it's so cliche, but just it's that saying of if you're going through hell, just keep going. And I feel like that is something that maybe I needed to hear a lot when I was younger. Because I think in my upbringing with my mom and just my teenage years, especially when you're just living with your parent and it's a really toxic setting and you're a teenager, it's not like you can just move out or go live somewhere else. And so I think I remember there was a lot of years when I was a teenager where I just had a lot of internal feelings of just like, God, this is like life just feels like a constant uphill battle and it's really exhausting and it's really relentless. And, um, at some point when I was 17, I think I got to move in with my dad and then I found music a year or two before that. And I feel like getting to find music and I'm lucky enough that I get to enjoy it as a career and a job and getting to live with my dad in like a healthier environment and just everything I've found through music in like the local scene and the community. Like I feel like I don't know if I met my daughter's mom through music. I don't know if I would have most amazing things in my life. I don't know if I would have without music. And thankfully I will say I never really danced around with like feelings of suicide or like wanting to end it early, but I definitely had a lot of friends who felt that way. And
Mhm.
I'm just like I'm grateful those thoughts never entered into my head. And I'm just grateful that I kind of stuck it out through every hard thing that I went through. And I just feel really lucky that I get to do music, that I get to be a father, and I feel like I wouldn't have I wouldn't have a lot of those things if I had just kind of given up or maybe used my pain as an excuse to go down like a really dark path. I think my dad kind of always instilled this sort of like quiet calmness in me and just to try and take your problems in stride and get through it as best you can. So, yeah, I would say just if you're somebody who likes our band and you're struggling out there, I really do believe that life can get a lot better if you give it time. But that's the hard part. It's just like trying to see the light at the end of a tunnel when it's a super dark environment that you're in.
100%. And even though it's a simple callback, it's one that carries a lot of weight. And I'm glad that you shared that because you're right. No matter what you're going through, it always really helps to hear that.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Rory, thank you so much for hopping on with us today. I really appreciate you just getting real about music and mental health and the new album. It really means a whole lot. And if any of you guys watching this are looking for support through music, just like we talked about today, you can sign up and get support as a peer in Support Calls program where you'll get matched with another trained music fan and you guys can go through the ups and downs of life together. We'll also probably see you at many festivals this summer. But Rory, thank you once again for hopping on, man. I really appreciate you.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, dude. I appreciate it.
100%.
Gotta